I can't think of a single subject that makes attorneys more nervous than the subject of fees. How much they charge, how do they charge, is it enough, is it too much, is it too little, and so on. When I start to discuss fees with attorneys, they become very agitated, they tend to turn red and get nervous and all of that kind of thing, because I think it is, I think there's a number of reasons for it. I think that most attorneys are motivated by a desire to serve, and they're pretty uncomfortable with the profit motive to begin with. And certainly our main religious structure in this country, the Judeo-Christian ethics, send very mixed messages about the pursuit of wealth, the pursuit of profit, the pursuit of money. And also what attorneys do for a living doesn't involve a whole lot of hard physical labor. So I think that there's a sneaking suspicion that a lot of attorneys have underneath it all that maybe what they do isn't really worth as much money as they charge. And you get a lot of guilt feelings because of that, I think. And I'd hope to change your mind about that. If you feel like that and you have trouble stating your fees, I hope this session will help you get past that, because most attorneys' fees are really have two components to them. Value, let's say. The two components are the knowledge and experience that you have as an attorney that tells you and the client what to do, knowing what to do in a given situation. And the other component is the actual physical labor of doing this thing. So if we take a field like estate planning, you have your knowledge as a counselor, as an attorney, of what somebody should do with their assets, with their instructions for their children, with their special needs child or parent, with a complicated situation with grandchildren or children. So knowing what to do is a very important part of that value. And then you have the other part of it, which is the actual drafting of the estate planning documents, the research that goes into that, into the family finances and so on, the work that would be done by you and your staff. In my experience, most attorneys are only charging for that second part. They are saying, well, that'll take me 2 hours, so I charge $150 an hour, I'll charge $300 for that, which ascribes no value to their experience, to their education at law school, to all the hard work they've done, or to their brain power or creativity or something like that. The model of labor plus time equals value is a 19th century economic model. It's actually, you can find it in the works of Karl Marx, strangely enough, although I don't think most attorneys would be very comfortable if I told them that based on their pricing they're Marxists. But that is the fact, that the Marxist formula was time plus labor equals value. So that is really not relevant in a 21st century information/results economy. Your greatest value is probably not in the labor, probably not in the drafting or anything like that, but it's much more in knowing what to do. I had this experience myself when I was starting my own business and I wanted a logo for the business. And there was a graphic designer I knew who was, I thought, very talented and very good, and I went in to talk to him about the logo and some of my ideas and thoughts on the logo. And he was sort of sitting in front of his computer screen, just kind of messing around, and he said, what about something like this? And he threw it up on the screen, and I said, my God, that's it. That's perfect. I love it. And I said, how much? And he said, $1,500. And I said, $1,500? That took you 5 minutes. And he said, no, that took me 20 years. It took him 20 years to know how to do that, to have the talent and the experience and the ability to hear me and translate that into exactly what I wanted. And as soon as he said it, I realized he was right, and I shut up and paid the bill. And so, what I want you to realize is that, something that may take you an hour might have, 15 years of learning behind it, and to value yourself accordingly and not undervalue yourself. Another key factor that I'd like you to understand is that most of the attorneys that I talk to begin with the presumption that human beings always want to pay less, always want the lower price. They assume that if they do a certain service for a certain price and there's a lawyer down the street who will do it for less, that lawyer is going to win the business. And that's not true. It's not always true anyway. There's a whole lot of people running around, people like me, who go into a store and see two identical things. I take the more expensive one because I believe it's better. I think it's better made, or it has better parts, or better materials, or it's going to last longer, or whatever. I believe implicitly that there's a reason that it costs more. And an awful lot of people are exactly like that. When you set a fee, you are communicating to the client exactly what you're worth. The client figures, hey, you know best what you're worth. So if your pricing tells them that you're a $50,000 a year attorney, then you're a $50,000 a year attorney. And if your pricing tells them that you're an elite attorney, then you're an elite attorney. Most of us, spent a lifetime listening to our grandparents tell us, you get what you pay for. Okay? And that premise really works in favor of your higher pricing, because people do believe that they get what they pay for. There's a story in one of the marketing books about a lady who owned a jewelry store in New Mexico. And she had a bunch of turquoise jewelry that was in a display case, and it had been there for like a year, and it just had not moved. It was going nowhere. And she went on vacation, and she left a note for her assistant, let's cut the price here. Let's change the price by half and see if we can't get rid of this stuff. And she came back from vacation, and all the jewelry was gone, all the turquoise jewelry, and she was delighted, And she said to her assistant, boy, I guess that price cut really worked. And her assistant said, price cut? I saw your note and it said X2, and so I doubled the price. And it all sold. What's the lesson from that little story? If you're working in an area where, as a consumer, you don't know the value, all right? I don't know the value of turquoise jewelry. I don't know the value of diamonds or anything like that. I'm not a gemologist. I don't carry a jeweler's loupe around with me. The only thing that tells me the value is the price. So the turquoise jewelry was telling people, this is valuable, good stuff. You should buy it. And they bought it. So if you are underpricing yourself, if you're doing price cutting and discount pricing and trying to be the low-cost provider, all you're really doing is telling everybody I'm not very good. And it's a very difficult way to compete, and I would advise you strongly not to do it. Most attorneys are afraid that they are going to lose all kinds of business by having pricing that's too high. And what you got to keep in mind is the mathematics. So let's say that you will do a given legal service, whatever it is, an estate plan, a criminal defense, a bankruptcy, a divorce, for $2,500. And you have 10 potential clients, and at $2,500, all 10 of those clients will say yes. Now let's say that you take the same potential clients and you say that the price is $5,000, and half of them immediately walk out the door and say, that's ridiculous, it's just too expensive, it's terrible, I'm not going to pay it. What's the result? Well, you've got 5 people who said yes at $5,000 versus the 10 who said yes at $2,500. Well, the result is the same amount of cash and half the work, because you only have to do half the plans, which leaves you with extra time, extra work capacity that you can then sell to other people. But you have to be willing to watch those 5 people walk away. And a lot of lawyers are just too scared to do that. A lot of times when I'm working with my own clients and I get them to raise their prices, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how to do that, they're terrified. And then the first couple of people come in to see them and they tell them the new prices, and one of the new people or both of them say yes to the new price. And my clients go, oh my God, how much money have I been leaving on the table for how long? It comes as a complete shock to them. I can tell you that I'm not immune to this myself, and I'll explain that most people have some sort of psychological block built up, most attorneys, about their own pricing. I remember talking to one attorney and he told me, well, I can't charge anything more than $1,200 for an estate plan. And I said, well, why not? And he said, well, that's the going price around here. And I said, well, how do you know that? And he said, well, there's this guy who has a radio show every Saturday morning, and he's like the financial expert, and everybody listens to him, and he says that's what it should cost. And I said, so based on this radio show, you believe that most people think that the going price for an estate plan is $1,200, but you have no actual evidence, just anecdotal evidence from this radio show. He said, yeah, that's right. I believe that that's the case. And of course I managed to bully him into raising his prices and so on. And it really didn't make any difference in his close rate. He still got a lot of good clients, but he got them at a much higher fee and was much happier. But he had built this story in his brain about why it could work. And I find that with most of the attorneys I talk to, they've got some sort of self-limiting thing about their price, about their practice, about succeeding, that they've managed to convince themselves of. And it's not until I can prove to them that that's not the case that they're willing to let that drop. So most of the attorneys that I meet, I would say 95% of the ones I meet are underpriced, are underpricing themselves. So don't make that mistake. Price yourself high. You don't want to be competing at the bottom end on discount pricing. You want to establish yourself at the top end of your market as an elite attorney who's worth the money. So let's say that I have convinced you that that's the case. By the way, this works for products as well as services. There's a lot of evidence in the marketing literature. 2 cases that come immediately to mind are Harley-Davidson motorcycles and Gibson guitars. And back in the early 1980s, both of those products were getting killed by Japanese imports, cheaper Japanese imports. And for a while they tried to compete on price, and they just got killed. Until each of them came to a similar conclusion and actually raised their prices. And that conveyed to the market that, hey, Harley-Davidson is a better motorcycle than these Japanese imports. Gibson guitars are better guitars than these Japanese imports. And their sales went up, not down. They rocketed up by this raise in prices. Very counterintuitive in terms of what you would think. You would think, oh my God, I'm being undercut on price, I've got to compete on price. But actually the opposite is quite true. So if I have convinced you of that, then you're going to have to say, well, how do I present fees, and how do I raise my fees, or how do I set them high in such a way that people will accept them? And one of the ways to do it is to have a graphical presentation of your fees. And I have one here that we do for our clients, and we're going to, when we edit this video, we'll cut a picture in of this so that you can see exactly what it is. But it's a presentation of one of my clients. It's a handout, and it has 4 levels of planning, estate planning in this case, with a price range for each level. Well, what does that mean? Why do we do this? Well, one reason is, there are a number of reasons. One of them is this, that for my attorneys who have a lot of problems dealing with price, this serves as something they can use to present and convey that price without having to talk about it in a way. I had a client, very, very nice woman, lady attorney, up in New York, and she just had so much trouble with pricing. And I would be coaching her. She would have a client meeting at 1 o'clock, let's say, and for 15 or 20 minutes before that call, I would be on the phone with her, and I would say, now, what are you going to say when it comes to price with this client? And she'd say, $4,500. And I'd say, what are you going to say? And she'd say, $4,500. And I'd say, what are you going to say? And she'd say, $4,500. And I'd call back in an hour and I'd say, what did you say? And she'd say, $2,500. She just felt such guilt about asking for this money and had such trouble getting it out of her mouth that was when I sort of invented this pricing sheet. And I said to her finally, look, next time this happens, next time somebody comes in for a consult, I don't want you to say anything. I just want you to slide this pricing sheet across the table and put it in front of your prospective client and just keep your mouth shut. And that, we found, worked. There's some other reasons why this works and why it's such an effective tool. First, I think that something that's printed is official. It has more weight and substance than something that you just said out of your mouth. So potential clients are less likely to try and negotiate something that's printed than something that you just said verbally. Another good reason for it is that if you're dealing with affluent people, as many of my estate planning clients often are, one of their fears is that once you find out how much they're worth, you're going to put the fee up. You're going to raise the fee in your mind. And this reassures them that the price is the price for everyone. So it's a very, very effective selling tool on any number of levels, and I urge you to have some sort of physical presentation of your pricing structure that you can use in that way. Another, I think, thing you have to do in order to present your fees with confidence is you have to prepare some answers to some common objections that you get all the time. I'll give you an example. I have clients periodically, potential clients, who ask me, couldn't you give me a discount? Couldn't you give me something off your fee? And I struggled with that question for a long time, and finally I came up with an answer. And my answer is this: it's no, I can't do that, and let me tell you why. I don't want to treat you like a second-class client. Okay? If I have clients who are paying me my full normal fee, and then I've got another client or two who are paying me less, where do you think your work's going to go in the pile of things that need to be done? It's going to go to the bottom. And in terms of queuing things up for attention by my staff, we're going to put you at the end of the line. That's a natural thing. That's a human thing, and I don't think there's any way around it. So we only have one class of clients, first class, and we treat everybody that way, and everybody pays the same price. And that has proved to be very convincing to potential clients who have accepted it really without argument. Other people, other business people that I know have developed other sorts of answers to typical and common objections. One attorney that I know faced a common objection that was this: well, this estate plan that you proposed to do for $2,500, the attorney down the street is advertising he can do it for, $850. What do you say about that? And for a while, my client was at a loss for words. Finally developed an answer. It was actually a question, and it was a great one. He would say to the potential client, well, why do you think that is? He would put it back in the client. And the client, the potential client, a lot of times would sit there and think for a minute and say, well, he must have a drawer full of documents that he just fills our names in on. Something like that. They understand at base that you get what you pay for, and a lot of times putting it back on them is a good sales technique. Another one of my clients, very confident person, when asked for discount or discount pricing, would say, well, if you only pay peanuts, you only get monkeys. And I think that most people understand that, again, that if you want to hire somebody who's really expert in their field, you can expect to pay a higher fee for that. So my point here isn't that this answer or that answer is good or better. It's simply that if you have answers to those common questions and you've made them up in advance, then you're going to be much more confident when it comes to presenting the fee and handling those kinds of objections. Let me finish by telling you that the kind of anxiety that you feel about fees you're not unique. Most attorneys that I know feel exactly the same thing. And I felt very much the same in my own business. At one point, we charged a monthly retainer of $3,000 a month for clients. And as my business grew, I was adding more and more capacity, especially in the field of internet marketing, as that became more and more important. And yet, I was still charging the same price of $3,000 a month. And I had a very elaborate story built up in my head about why I couldn't charge more than that. I thought, well, if I charge more than $3,000 a month, no solos or small law firms will be able to afford us. We'll have to start working with bigger law firms. Bigger law firms will mean group decision making, which I hate. It'll also mean more and more demand on our capacity, which will be difficult to fulfill. I had a huge story all made up. And then one January, I just bit the bullet and I said, no, from now on it's $4,000 a month and that's it. And you know what? It did not make the slightest difference in my closing rate. Anybody who was willing to pay $3 was willing to pay $4. And anybody who wasn't willing to pay either wasn't going to be my client anyway. So there's a 25% raise in revenue without doing a damn thing differently other than changing your pricing. So I urge you to be very careful about not setting your pricing too low when you open your firm. And I would say if your firm is struggling now with profitability issues and all of that, take a long look at raising your prices and realize that it won't mean less business, it will mean more business.